Hello and welcome back. This is the third video in our Throwback Pride series. It's a chance to meet Abigail and Lilith as they talk to us about their book Gears for Queers. We hope you enjoy.
Our friends and family met the announcement of our planned cycle tour with confusion and alarm. How could two people, routinely unable to leave the house for days on end, manage to cycle from Amsterdam to Spain? So Abby and Lily, it's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you for being here. I'm not sure whether you exaggerated for narrative effect in the book, but if you were even half as anxious and, let's say, not entirely prepared as you make out, it was an achievement to get out of the door and fantastically brave to set off cycling across Europe.
Thank you. Thanks. I think in some ways we kind of downplayed it, and we did just sort of hurl ourselves out the door.
Yeah.
I think when, I don't know, when you have kind of anxiety about stuff, sometimes if you start thinking about it, there's a tendency to overthink, and you never actually do it. So we really just kind of went and decided we'd figure out as we were going.
Yeah.
And we actually have the moment we embarked on this tour on film. We left my mum's house in Cambridge. We were catastrophically hungover because we'd had a leave-in barbecue the night before, and we'd assembling all of our stuff on bikes in my mum's garden in the kind of beating midday sun. And I don't know if you know that moment in Bake Off when the judges are going round and they're like, "Oh, have you made these two parts of the cake and put them together before?" And the contestants always like, "No," and the judges look at them kind of alarmed. That's sort of what we were like. We'd put all of the stuff in the panniers before. We'd never tried putting the panniers on the bikes, let alone riding the bikes.
And we found out that we couldn't fit most of it on.
Yeah, so we were kind of frantically cramming stuff on. And we'd never practiced riding the fully loaded bikes before, but we had a train to catch. So we captured this moment on film, if you'd like to see it.
That's absolutely brilliant. I love that film clip. So tell us more. I mean, why? What's the backstory and what made you launch yourself off into this adventure? And what were you hoping to get from it?
Well, I think there were a lot of reasons we decided to go on a tour. I think both of us felt a little bit stuck where we were in Cambridge, and we kind of wanted an adventure and to travel just to travel. We hadn't really done much traveling before, and we both always wanted to travel. And before I met Lily, I'd decided I was going to walk the world. And when I met Lily, Lily was like, "Well, why don't we bike it instead?" Which was slightly terrifying because I hadn't been on a bike for the past maybe 8 years or so. That's kind of why we decided.
I'm not sure where the idea of a cycle tour really came from because we didn't really know anyone who had done it. And I think I was kind of vaguely aware of the notion that you could do it. And we sort of felt like, well, we'll give that a try.
We'll give it a go. How hard can it be? And originally our plans were much longer than we actually ended up cycling. So originally we'd planned to get to the Netherlands, work down the Rhine River, which is what we ended up doing, and then end up in Spain for the winter where we'd, hang out, maybe working on a sort of farm for a few months whilst it was cold, and then we'd end up getting back on our bikes and maybe cycling to Greece or something. Yeah. But we didn't really have much of a plan.
No, our initial plan was very much get to Amsterdam, follow the Rhine. It'll be flat and it's relatively completed in terms of Eurovelo routes, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you had some really interesting kit choices. I mean, I love the fact that you had a ukulele and a hot water bottle, I learned from reading the book, but you didn't really seem to have very good maps, for example.
The maps thing is a really interesting thing, actually, because like we didn't really know what maps to get. Like, not only were we not like we hadn't any experience of cycle touring, we really weren't like confident outdoorsy folk. So we'd maybe read a map for D of E. And I think because of that, we were like, ordnance survey maps, those make sense. So we got a couple of those, which proved absolutely useless on literally our first day when we were trying to follow the Dutch cycle routes. And completely like didn't know what we were doing. But we found, we ended up in Amsterdam, and we went to this map shop, and we found this map of the Dutch cycle routes, and that really set the tone, I think, for where we tended to, or how we started to acquire maps, and I guess also kind of acquire that knowledge as well, because like we increasingly found that like once we were in a place, we could find the best maps for navigating that place.
Although hilariously, when we were in Germany, we were staying with someone from Warm Showers, and he had these excellent maps. We actually have one here. They're the bike line ones, which are quite useful. And we thought they looked brilliant, so we decided we were going to get our own copies for the Rhine. And we went and bought them, and obviously because we bought them in Germany, they were all in German, so we couldn't read any of the information in them at all.
And then we went back to them when we had better German, and we come back from the tour, and we were like, oh, this says don't cycle on that side of the river.
After we'd cycled on the terrible part of the river.
But the maps thing is definitely something that like is something that we did, or it felt like we were doing it wrong when we started. But actually, like, it's really something that we kind of stuck to, in the sense that like we don't use GPSs, and lots of people do, and I think like they have a place and can be really useful. But like because of kind of where we're cycling, which tends to be just Europe, we really appreciate and value having like maps and like having to source that sort of like local knowledge, and we're quite comfortable now just turning up places without a map and being like, right, let's figure this out. Like
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really love to have maps myself. You had a lot of gear on the back of those bikes. I mean, you were camping, right? So I guess that accounted for quite a bit of it. How was the whole camping thing for you?
It was a learning curve. We weren't like confident campers.
Well, I knew how to put up a tent fairly well, and I was confident that we could do that. But we'd never tried a gas stove or anything before we got to Amsterdam, and Lily was genuinely terrified of screwing the head into the gas stove for at least a month on the tour.
Convinced it was going to kill me. I just could see it.
And the other problem we had is we bought particular airbeds without realizing that you really shouldn't like cover yourself in DEET and insect repellent and then rub yourself all over your airbed, because we then ended up breaking the airbeds within the first few weeks.
We definitely learned that we brought a lot of unnecessary stuff. The hot water bottle I stand by. That was a good call, because whilst over the summer it wasn't useful, as it got colder into autumn it was. The ukulele, I'm in two minds about. We didn't bring one. We did a second tour more recently, and we didn't bring a ukulele.
No,
on that
although
tour.
it was fun on the first tour.
Rest days.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And your bikes had names, right? Your bikes were Patty and Paula. Tell us about Patty and Paula and how your relationship is with Patty and Paula now.
So I'll start with Paula, because that was my bike. She was named after Paula Radcliffe because she was very sturdy over long distances. And they were both kind of steel-framed. Well, mine was a steel-framed mountain bike from like the 90s that we sort of had help from a local bike shop fitting up to tour. And Paula sadly got left behind in France just because the cost of sending her back home was way more than the cost of what we spent on her. It's like €100 to post a bike home.
Yeah.
Whereas Patty...
Yeah, so my bike was, again, a second-hand steel-framed doors. And it was beautiful, but it was also maybe a little bit too small for me. And I didn't realise quite how small it was until we set off on the second tour with it. And it broke catastrophically. The bottom bracket just seized. So we had to get a train to Glasgow, where we basically had to take it apart and put all of its parts onto a new frame. And as soon as I got on this new frame, I was like, oh, this isn't as hard as it has been. Like, cycling actually isn't
It
that
has
hard.
like gears and brakes.
And I've just been struggling on this frame that
But
was way
Patty
too small.
was named Patty after
Yeah,
Patti
Patti
Smith
Smith.
because she was a work of art, if incredibly temperamental. Like nothing has ever really gone wrong with my bike, with the exception of that time the screw fell out from the pannier rack. Whereas your bikes are just like incredibly temperamental.
They just break all the time. Yeah.
Well, homage to Patti Smith there. You're also vegan, both of you, and I must say I have such respect for that. I'm vegetarian and I know what it's like to be a hungry vegetarian cyclist on the road, and it's often really not straightforward. You're both vegan, which ups that challenge to another level, I think. And sometimes that really created some genuine dilemmas. I mean, there you are on the road, you're really, really hungry. What are you going to eat? And there's that great story that you tell about getting back to the tent. You've gone shopping, you've come back with pasta, it's in a foreign country, you haven't read the ingredients, and then when you do read the ingredients, oh my goodness, it's got eggs in, what are you going to do? So talk us through the whole vegan thing. I mean, and also why you clearly care so much about it. What's your motivation for being vegan, and how did you navigate those real challenges when you're so hungry on the road and you need to eat and it's just difficult?
Yeah. So we came to veganism a bit differently. So I was like a very avid carnivore up until about the age of 22, where I just went vegan overnight, and that was mostly for environmental reasons. I'd sort of seen some memes and some infographics about like meat production, and I was just like, oh, I mean, I have the opportunity to not be vegan, to not be a meat eater, to be vegan, so I guess I'll do it then. And then you were completely different.
I was brought up vegetarian, so my whole family was vegetarian, and then I sort of, kind of all of us started eating meat a bit in our teenage years, and then I went back to being veggie, and then really turned vegan after we met. I think both of us went vegan for kind of environmental reasons, and kind of it maybe turned into more than that, but that was really the motivator. But I think it was not just that it was environmental reasons. I often say like one of the reasons I became vegan was that it was really easy for me, and so it seems silly to do anything otherwise. Like I have loads of access to good vegan food. I grew up cooking veggie meals, which are really easy to turn vegan. I don't have any health things that means that's a hard transition for me to make. So it just seemed an obvious choice to like a way to eat more ethically and to make more informed choices about what I was eating.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also catch the full hour-long interview with the Gears for Queers crew on the Kendal Mountain Player. It's just $9.99 a month, and we have a 3 free-day trial. Link in the description below. Check it out.